Hey everyone, welcome to my weekly recap of Trinidad Bhojpuri Words, and not a phrase this week. My apologies, there wasn't a post on a Wednesday where we usually have our Trinidad Bhojpuri phrase, but our chosen words for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday did not disappoint. So let's jump right into it. I'm Karen Das.
And I'm Dr. Visham Bhimull from Caribbean Hindustani.
All right. So on Monday, we kicked off the week with the name for a popular piece of furniture. And some folks actually described this as a piece of ancestral history or an ancestral treasure in the home. And that was Peerhaa, commonly pronounced locally as just Peerhaa.
If you would realize a lot of the stuff that would have been used by indentured laborers um, domestically for domestic house use, because I remember my grandmother used to sit on one. Slowly, because of modernization, we have we have couches and chairs and dining room tables and all these things. Um, Something like a Peerhaa, which is a relatively, well, I mean, people say it's a small bench, but it could be, well, in a sense, it's like that because you have long ones and you have short ones.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a domestic convenience that would have existed in the indentured laborer's home, because there wasn't like the modern setting for a dining table to eat or anything like that. Only later on, people started constructing their own big tables with these. So basically, the benches were made like Peerhas, but it was like larger, so that brought the semblance of what a dining room table is. But most Indian people would just sit if they don't stoop, right?
Yeah.
Um, Stoop down to eat. They would usually sit on a small bench. You usually call a Peerha. Now,
And this,
now they use it for ritual stuff. Like again, in the marriage ceremony, you'd see all these utensils and items of domestic use like pirha as part of the ritual, but they don't really exist anymore in modern day.
but what was the significance of having a Peerhaa in the Hindu wedding?
Right. So if you realize a lot of Indian wedding traditions would center around one, the story of the Ramcharitamanas, as well as um, things that were used for conveniences. So we mentioned rice last time, talking about rice being the staple, rice being so a symbol of prosperity, meaning it's food, as well as itself multiplying and bounty with regard to the whole issue of planting of rice. So if
Yeah.
you notice, a lot of what they would do on a daily basis would be given, which is a actual pragmatic practice, would now be attached to the philosophy, which is in the ritual. um, so if you would look at under the marrow, they would have things like they would have a pirha, they would have I believe it's a silan lodha, and they would have um, okri and musar, things related to the kitchen. So all that is again so that you'd have the bounty of food and prosperity in a marriage. And then even the stories as to how things would go with regard to the narration in the Ramcharitamanas and so. So a lot of what was used on a daily basis was seen as essential and integral, and so would also form part of the rituals themselves.
All right. So Peerhaa, that is a proper pronunciation. Peerhaa.
Well, yes, is a aspirated artha, so pidha, because pida, and that's a good point we want to make, because pida versus pidha, it means two different things, right?
Mm,
Um, Peerhaa is the small bench, whereas Peerha, which is the unaspirated, means pain.
Peerhaa.
So
Oh,
Peerha, yeah, you say hamar muri pirai 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 avela, right? Or pirai jala, meaning my head is hitting. So Pida means pain.
okay. Good. Good to know. Peerhaa is the pronunciation. Let's see. On a Tuesday, we had vibrant interaction. This was Sasuraar. Sasuraar. A lot of folks found it familiar because they were thinking about that 60s Bollywood movie Sasural, but Sasuraar. And some folks thought, okay, this is a word that you'd use to refer to your mother in law. Other folks simply said in laws.
Right. So a lot of people kind of more exposed to modern standard Hindi through Bollywood films and through the soaps and stuff on TV. And then we had mentioned this before. Allah in Hindi becomes Ara in Bhojpuri. So Sasural becomes Sasurar, right? One thing that is maintained in the Bhojpuri is that there are inflections, like in Sanskrit. I don't know if we have different cases. So if you say a talk, the boy speaks, but you say I speak to the boy. To the
Mhm.
boy is a preposition. In Sanskrit, you don't have those words. You just basically inflect accordingly. Right? To Ram, from Ram, at Ram, and so right. Ram being a name of a person. In the same way, in Trinidad Bhojpuri, you have those inflections. So when you say ghar par, it'll be at home in
Mhm.
just ghare in Bhojpuri. So the same happens, and you hear it in songs. There's a song, um, uh, Namore Sasure Me Lahura De Varawa. That's a song by Ramdev Chaitu. I try to remember his name. रात के सपना. Yeah. Namore Sasure Me Lahura De Varawa. So Sasure, again, an inflection of Sasurar, becomes
Ah,
at my in-laws. So that Sasurar means the in-laws house. Specifically, what would the girl would refer um to her in-laws house, right? What the girl refers to her parents' house and what the husband will refer to her parents' house will be different. We'll explore that probably in the next one. But yes, so Sasurar, which would be the house or the abode or the place of the in-laws, specifically that of the girl, and well, Sas would be mother-in-law, and Sasur would be father-in-law, and Sasurar would be house of the Sasur and the Sas.
okay. Sasurar, your in-laws residence.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so once again, apologies, there wasn't a phrase posted on Wednesday, but on Thursday we had a bit of excitement on Facebook because the word chosen for Thursday was Kheesaa. Now, if you depended on Google to help you out with the translation, you probably would have come across the translation for the Hindi word Kheesaa, not necessarily Trinidad Bhojpuri word. So, Dr. Bhimal, you're going to have to clear this up.
The Hindustani language itself, when I say Hindustani spans all different languages in northern India. They all have the Hindustani languages, Bhojpuri being and Hindi being one. They all would have cognates. So that this stems now from where it's not a matter of an accent, a Bihari accent, but a cognate of the same word that wouldn't sound exactly the same in Hindi or in Bhojpuri, right? Now, there is this word in that comes from Urdu, which obviously would come from Persian Arabic, and it's Kheesaa, right? Kheesaa, um, and it means a story. Sometimes you say Kheesaa kahani. You hear that in modern standard Hindi. It means stories and all those fairy tales. As a
Mhm.
compound that means that. Now, a lot of times these words would tend to be pronounced differently and morph into a new word. So, like in Trinidad Bhojpuri, so Kheesaa becomes, Kheesaa being an Arabic word loaned into the Hindustani languages, now becomes Kheesaa. Kheesaa. It becomes a long E now with a aspirated ka. Kheesaa. Now, just by coincidence, in Hindi, there's a similar word Kheesaa that means a pocket or a purse, right? Or any small little bag, small little bag you usually would hold valuables in. Um, and the two words might sound the same, but the roots are completely different. So I just explained the etymology of Kheesaa, which comes from Kheesaa, which comes from originally from Arabic.
Mm.
Remember, Arabic, Persian, and Prakrit, the spoken variety of Sanskrit, is what infused or eventually formed the vocabulary and grammar of the Hindustani languages. So this is an example now of where, yes, you'd have an equivalent in Hindi, but it doesn't necessarily mean the etymology or the evolution will be the same. A completely different word, even though they sound the same.
All right, good. So now I understand why people thought it meant pocket. Not just because they Googled it, but also those who would have
And
heard it
this is a
differently.
this is a realm now where we reach where Bhojpuri and Hindi are not the same. Is not the same. They're not the same
Oh, not
language.
always, yes. So
Yeah.
Kheesaa is simply a story.
Yeah, a story, but I mean, in our context, is the story or old story or legend stories that your grandparents would tell you. But I think it could still, because all stories, be it Rapunzel or be it Hansel and Gretel, they all come
Hmm.
from that same legend tradition. Hansel and Gretel is a Germanic story.
Yeah,
I think Rapunzel comes from somewhere else in Europe. So I would translate it as a story, as in the context of a, a story based on a legend, which would be a fairy tale.
a fairy tale. Could it also be used to refer to folklore?
Yeah, a story based in folklore. So, like a Papaboa story would be like a kisa. The thing is that we have two other words that exist in Bhojpuri as well, kahani and katha. So,
Mhm.
these are stories, yes, but they're not the same story like a kisa, which would be based on folk legend. A kahani could be any story in general. A kisa could be a type of kahani, kisa. But
Mhm.
a katha is not just any story. A katha is a story that is based in religious texts like the Mahabharata, the Ramcharitamanas, or Ramayana. So they are different because of the unique culture or uniqueness of Indian culture. Um, yeah, there are different words for stories, but it depends on what type of story within the context of our culture that we will call it.
Oh, I love this. So from Kisa, it was just one word, but now we understand Kisa, Kahani, and Katha. This is great.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is good.
Exactly. Yeah. Three different types of stories, really, and it depends on the context of where you'd use it.
Right. And on Friday, we usually go with a food related word. And on Friday, we had Chaaur, which many people responded to saying rice. But it's not just rice.
Right. And I wouldn't. There were some comments, but we have to save those. We did bhat last week when we explained bhatwan.
One, yes.
So I could use those two. I wouldn't use because remember rice itself is planted, harvested. They do process and then you cook. So it has
Mhm.
different words for different stages of that um, uh, processing of rice before we eat it. So it's yeah, chawr, right? Now those who learn modern standard Hindi or Hindi formally in classes, they learn chawal, right? Now in India they say dal chawal, which means dal and rice, which is what we have here, regular dal and rice, specifically the cooked rice.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when you use chawal, the word you use for rice, within the context of Hindi, they use it for rice that is dehusked and not cooked yet, as well as cooked rice. They use it for. They also use bhat, but the thing is that bhat is now seldom used in India. They more use chawal. Bhat, and I mentioned this a lot of times, is that the word that we use in our Trinidad Bhojpuri are archaic in the context of it probably used to be used at an earlier time, right?
Mhm.
Um, I remember interestingly, I was looking at an entry by Queen Victoria. She spoke Urdu, Hindustani. She learned from one servant she had from India, and she had used the past tense as Raha. And I was like, but wait, if this is from Queen Victoria's time, and I know Raha is in Suriname and Trinidad, Bhojpuri as for was, why it is we learn Tha. So it
Mm.
means that the language that was spoken during colonial times during indentureship, it wasn't exactly the same form as the language we have as modern standard Hindi, which went through a lot of changes after the independence of India. And that was a point in India where we, our ancestors, weren't there. So those changes we would not be aware of. So we actually ascribed to what words they would have used in a unique context back then, prior to the independence of India during colonial times. So the common word that was used was bhat for cooked rice and chawal for uncooked rice, which would be well, the husk rice before you put it into boil. You want to use the soup to fan, and then you pick it to clean it before you cook it. And the cognate again, we speak about cognates. Again, we see la becoming ra. So chawal and that va we don't pronounce it in our bush. We normally pronounce it as a wa. So it becomes chaur, chaur, right?
Oh,
So chawal and chaur. Chawar is the cognate of chawal. in Hindi Chaaur in Trinidad Bhojpuri, and we still have that pre-partition concept of the chaur or chawal in Hindi being the rice before it's cooked. So whenever we say chaur, is not cooked rice. We ever use it in that context. We use it in the context of rice that is uncooked and not cooked rice. So when I say chaur, you're specifically talking about uncooked rice that has been husked. The husk has been removed.
Okay, and there is a word for the unhusked rice.
Well, the husked rice.
Husked rice.
Well,
Right. So
yeah,
chowder
unhusked.
is
Yeah.
the
Yes.
unhusked. No,
Yes.
chowder. Yes, chowder is unhusked.
Right,
And
and there's another word for the rice with how husk rice or the rice that you're actually reap from the rice fields, right? That still have the husk on it. There's a different word for that.
right,
And
and
again, that comes into tradition because if people go back to Buje di Lawa and the parai that they actually use in the wedding ceremony, they don't use I think they don't use the husk rice which for cooking the chowd. They actually use the unhusked rice. Sorry, they use the husk rice. They rice with the husk on it in the parai, I believe it is. Or and they actually use it to decorate the kalsa in the
oh
marrow,
yes, yes, yes.
right? So again, are showing that these different forms of rice, cooking the rice, as well as the unhusked rice and the rice with the husk still in it, each of them represent different stages, also have um, ritualistic significance as to what you do with them.
Oh, wow. So there's so much that comes out of these words. So it's not just remembering what the word means or trying to make sense of the word, learning its pronunciation, but from one word, you realize that you have so many other words that you can link to this. And then, of course, you have a different pronunciation as well. So this was actually an interesting week, a short one without a phrase, but yeah, this was quite engaging as well on social media. And we want to thank you guys so much for that because when you share with us, it gives us that learning experience and you open us up and you expose us to different usage and so much history that comes out of this little feature, Trinidad Bhojpuri Words and Phrase. So, tell you what, we're going to have fresh words for you this coming week and it's going to be even more interactive. So thanks a lot for catching up with us. Dr. Visham Bhimull, remind us how we can get in touch with you.
Caribbean Hindustani, you can check out the Facebook page, Caribbean Hindustani or CaribbeanHindustani.org. That's the website where we look at other aspects apart from just vocabulary, but songs and translations and other aspects of Trinidad Bhojpuri and Caribbean Hindustani, the language.
And if there's a word that you think that we should include in our project, feel free to inbox us and share with us. And who knows, we can actually have this featured on Trinidad Bhojpuri Words and Phrases. I'm Karen Das.
And I'm Dr. Visham Bhimull.
Catch you guys next week. Bye.